Hello, co-creators. Welcome back to this episode of the Co-Create Work podcast. We are so thrilled to be here with you today. And we are looking forward to the conversation. We're going to talk a bit about personal development, leadership development. We've been talking last week, Chloe, on the topic of
Personal transformation leads to organizational
organizational
transformation.
transformation. And so we wanted to just double click and we talked a little bit about like what might be getting in the way, things that block that, but how and why maybe a bit more should you do this? And so Chloe just recently attended a wonderful event in Las Vegas. She's
Yes,
going
I
to
just got
share
back.
about that information and some thoughts. And then we're just going to give you a few recommendations about why you should invest in this way, really make time for yourself and not just you, but also for your team. So, with that,
Yes.
let's kind of get started here. Chloe, why, just to kick us off, why do you think it's critical for leaders to step outside of their organization and tap into other networks and other groups of people? Often we'll have leaders talk about, they have an offsite, they have this thing or that thing that they need to go to. And we, encourage them quite a bit to say, hey, actually take a step outside your company. So
Yep.
what are your thoughts about that?
Yes. So, as you mentioned, I just came from this event, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of things from the event that illustrate why it's so important. So, the first evening I was there, I was chatting with someone about her business and what she's doing. And she was talking through and making this pivot. And as she was talking through it, I just asked a couple of questions because I didn't know anything about or a lot about the industry, the business, what she was in, what she was doing. So I just was asking some questions. And through that process, because I wasn't in it and I was asking kind of basic questions about it, she got insights for herself. I didn't do all I did was ask questions. I didn't have any brilliant insights for her. I just was like, well, I'm curious about this. And she had this brilliant epiphany about a change that
Mhm,
she wanted to make. And so I think
mhm.
that's number one is perspective. Getting other
Yes.
people's perspectives, other people's questions. When we are in what we do, we know so much about it. We're
Yeah.
reading about it, we're learning about it, we're talking about it. And it can be really easy to miss innovation. It can be really easy to miss opportunities to partner or to think about how to approach something differently. And being in community with others outside of your organization. And right now,
Yeah.
I'm talking about a different industry,
Yeah.
can make a huge difference. There's also the benefit of talking to people who are in your industry, but not in your business
Mm,
because they will have different thoughts and approaches as well, and you can build off one another and sometimes create partnerships depending on your role in your organization. If you're leading an organization, there are partnerships that can be created. There's like, our word of the year, Lakita, is synergy. And
yeah.
so it's feeling that synergy piece as well is like you can partner, you can learn how they do things. You start to understand, their customer base, your customer. There's just so many things. I know I'm getting deep real fast, but there are so many benefits to getting outside of your world and your
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanna mention, and I wanna double click on this a little bit later, but is that when you're in your organization, um, and you're having conversations, sometimes we have to be careful about the types of conversations we're having. If we're just like ideating, you don't want your team to go and run with some idea. Or if you're just talking something through, you don't necessarily want your team to be like, oh, we're doing this thing now.
Mhm.
Having people outside of your organization to ideate with so that you can have a little bit more formulated before you bring something to your team can be great also.
Yeah, absolutely. And often when folks are feeling stuck in business strategy, I would say they're like, hey, I've been doing this thing,
Yep.
executing kind of what we talked about, and I'm not feeling momentum. Is this typical? Is this atypical? I feel like I have tried everything I can try. is this typical? Is it not typical? We really encourage them, and we'll just jump out and say, "Hey, attend an event, attend a conference, attend a mastermind." We all really want to be excited, right? Joy and passion is a big part of our work, and sometimes even when we feel deeply connected to what we're doing, we could just kind of lose a bit of steam. And so connecting externally with folks helps to bring that back up. And to your point about just asking, you asking this person some questions, help them to really tap into, oh, I have a new idea. Like, I don't get to just talk about the business to someone as they are like completely new to what I'm doing. And
Yep.
this helps to really shift things. In addition to that, one of the things that we have been noticing, talking about, also really advocating for is for us to shift much more towards community focus versus just being insular as a company. And I think, as you mentioned, synergy being our word of the year, like this is a bit of a magic formula. We have seen so much that when leaders that we partner with, owners that we partner with, when they go out and they tap into community, they have so many more ideas. They build collaborations and partnerships. Their team feels really connected. So community is the future of how we're going to work together in business and in leadership. And so if you have typically been someone that's really, insulated in the business, or a part of a team that really is focused heads down in the business, we encourage you to get out and about a bit. And it's, in the US at least, a great time for it because we're we're coming into late spring and summer months. So get out there and attend some events and to connect with some folks.
The other thing, Lakita, around the community piece, and you mentioned, you can feel like, how's my business doing? A little bit discouraged at times. Being in community, a couple of things happen. A, you have some folks in your community who are going to help energize you, right? Like be
Yeah.
your cheerleaders, be excited, ask you questions. You also, and these people might be the same, but you'll also have people who have experienced the same thing, are experiencing the same thing. And there's something so powerful about recognizing that you aren't alone in this, that what you're experiencing is very normal, that it will pass. It's, whatever it is temporary. Like there's just some amazing things about being in connection and community with other people to help motivate, energize, innovate, so many things, not to mention just the learning that happens, right? So we're not talking about like be in community, go grab coffee and just from a social perspective.
Mhm.
Intentional communities, communities
Yeah.
of folks who are thinking about their businesses. If you don't own your own business, community of folks who are thinking about leadership and how to lead
Absolutely.
differently. I think one of the things that in the work that we do that's been so powerful, we have some different clients where we coach a number of people within their organizations,
Mhm.
right? And the opportunity for them, A, it's a little bit of a connection where as a coach, I'm not building a whole community for someone, I'm
Yeah.
one person.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of connection and there's an opportunity to talk about things differently than you do within the organization
Absolutely.
because you can be a little bit more open, a little bit more emotionally transparent. Not that you don't want to do that a bit. I mean, you want to do that at work with your coworkers, but there's a difference, right? We've talked a lot about authenticity and how authentic, how much of yourself to bring to certain situations. Sometimes you need to talk things through, and the right people to talk it through with are not the people in your organization. It's not your
Mhm.
team members. So the power of having someone external to your team who can provide feedback, who can ask questions, who can whatever that looks like, right? Really being intentional about how you're in community and connection with others. Yes, we need our social lives for sure, but what we're talking about is really intentional community, really intentional connection that is going to help make you a better leader, a better business owner, whatever your role is.
Mhm, mhm. So how about, Chloe, we shift here and you tell us a little bit about the event you attended. So just a little overview of the event, and then I would love to hear, maybe we could share with folks your three takeaways as it comes, connects with this idea of personal development and community.
Yes. So the event I attended was it was a bigger conference type event. So there were about 60 of us at this event.
Mm,
We sat, and I'm going to go through it in a little bit of detail just because I think it's important. 60-person event, you may think I'm going to get lost in the shuffle a bit. And so you want to think about the events you're attending. And this one in particular, I had attended it last year as well. I know that the event organizer, her name's Renee, puts us at tables and is very intentional about that. So going into this event, she knows what we all do, what our backgrounds are. So I was sat at a table with folks who are in similar types of spaces as we're
mm,
in, but different, right? Different approaches. So there was an opportunity to really connect with folks and learn deeply. And we did some things at our tables with each other, had great discussions with folks who were in a similar space. So I was able to share what we're doing, learn from them, come up with different ideas. I've got a podcast guest for us, Lakita. I haven't even talked to you about that yet, who's going to be great. So that, and it was a lot of learning. She happens to be a sales coach, so
mm,
there was some focus on that piece, which from my own perspective and in choosing events to attend, that's something that's important for me in my development. So I want to name, like, it's important to think about the type of development that
yeah.
you are wanting to do because you can find community for that type of development.
Mhm.
And so there's some intentionality behind that
Yeah.
as well. Different speakers got up and shared what they do, their approaches to things. We had exercises we did at the end of these worksheets to fill out. So there was very much a learning element to it, but it was learning in community. Even our lunches had prompts and questions to get to know each other. So again, it's that intentionality behind the
Mhm.
community piece
I
that,
hear
like,
that so much,
yes, it's
yeah.
so important, not just go to lunch and socialize, but like, here's things to talk about. The other thing about this particular event is one of her goals is to make sure that we all have people that we can refer people to. If it's not, someone comes to us and is like, I have this business with my kid and whatever. Well, I now know someone who does great work for kid run businesses, right? So, like, I've
Amazing.
made that connection and I can refer folks to that person. She has, this person has her own business and she's consulting with family run businesses. Well, if they get into those bigger spaces of like culture pieces, she can refer to us. Right. So there's also that intentionality around like, how can we be in partnership and building this network of folks so that you can really serve your clients fully. And by serving your
Mhm.
clients fully, it doesn't mean you're doing all the work, but you can provide resources, references, referrals, etc.
Or
So,
yeah, I love this, and I really appreciate the, quality of the events you attend, or maybe even just a focus. So,
yep,
I would say it's important to attend conferences because that typically brings in new ideas about your industry and the direction that the industry is going. In this event, what I'm hearing is a real intentionality behind really building, like, extended community and making connections, and that the ability to be able to refer each other but still learning deeply within that space. So I think that's really powerful. It can sometimes feel hard to find events, is some of the feedback that we really receive, Chloe. I'm curious, how did you initially come upon this event? I know it's like several steps, so you don't have
several
to go through
steps. And
everything,
you're gonna have to share part of
but
it because
is
you're
it
part of it.
but is it how, how might folks begin to identify and like look for opportunities for events like these? Because I know you said it is several steps that got here. I'm also wondering maybe how the event was publicized, because
Yeah,
we got into it maybe a really internal
yeah.
way, like we knew someone who knew someone. But if we how was the event publicized, as well, could be really helpful for folks.
Yes, so this was very much Instagram and Facebook. So Renee has a Facebook group called Experts Connect. That's what the name of the event is that she advertises, and she is out there all the time sharing. What was really interesting though in talking to folks at the event is the number of people who were at the event because someone else was at the event. And I name
Mm,
that because talk to people. I don't think, in fact, Lakita, I would say myself included, I don't think we really think to ask other folks, like, what events have you attended this year? What things have you done this year for your
that's a
development that have really helped you?
That's a great opening question too. If
Right?
you're an introvert like me and you don't like small talk, this is a great question
Yes.
to open up with people.
Yes, because the number of people who were at the event because they knew someone who had gone to it and had been really helpful and, they brought them along. I think of the, 60 people, I probably, and I didn't even talk to all 60 people throughout the event, but I think I talked to probably 6 people who were there because someone else had been there.
Mm,
I was there because I attended a mastermind, and maybe Lakita, you can talk a little bit about masterminds because I think we have a lot of listeners, and especially if you're not an entrepreneur or if you're not in online entrepreneurial spaces, sometimes you just haven't heard of
it's
masterminds. But I
harder.
was
Yeah.
there, yeah, because I had attended a mastermind with Renee, who runs the event. It's her event, her organization. And so I knew her, and that's where I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to this thing. Very out of character for me because I went to like she's the only person I knew, and I was just like, I'm just gonna jump in and attend. And I think I've mentioned this. Like I'm just going to name this because I think it's important for people to
Mm,
understand. I have very high social anxiety.
mm.
I do not like going into new situations unless I have a purpose. I'm like, I just as an attendee, it's really hard for me. And and so looking for events that make intentional connections that have a
Mhm.
lot of that intentionality where it's not like I probably wouldn't be great going to just a conference where there's not real intentional
You get
smaller
or
groups to
guidance.
connect.
Yeah.
Yes, some
Mhm.
guidance there. So, but on that note, Lakita, what about masterminds? Because masterminds are so powerful, and I think people don't know enough about them.
Yeah, I love masterminds. So it's a group. It's really it being intentional and bringing together a group of folks, and it doesn't have to be same industry or anything like that. It's just the idea that we come together, and sure, it's led by someone, but we really also have an exchange of ideas. They're typically kept pretty small, between 12, maybe 15 people, and it gives us the opportunity to be in think of it like a cohort. So a cohort model where we're going to learn together and be in community together. Sometimes there are 2-day masterminds, and then sometimes there's masterminds that last for the year, and you kind of attend different events, either virtually or in person together. What I find really powerful about them is that you often get to know a small group deeply, and that is really powerful because you get to learn the person, learn their business or their team, what they're focused on, and ways that you can collaborate or partner together, not just sail together, right? To have podcast conversations, which is something that you mentioned, Chloe, to connect on resources that might have to do with your family or how you're doing things at home, because we know, like, all we talked about wraparound support before, right? And so as a
Yep.
leader, we need all of these different inputs. And so, I've attended masterminds where I have gotten referrals to great doctors that my kiddo needed. So it is really a group of intentional, like small community coming together with the focus around business or leadership, but also you really get to share. And I think so many people are missing this right now. You've seen the stats and details about loneliness and how lonely people feel. This can feel like an even heavier burden for folks that are in leadership or who own a company. So, really encourage masterminds. Chloe, I know we are going to share both, like, some things that you can do to expand community and personal development. In the show notes, we're also going to list kind of some of our favorite folks who we know offer these sort of spaces. So you
Yep.
don't have to go, because it's not really a thing you can Google, I find. Um, and so we want to make sure we have that. I would love, before we transition into that, for you to share your 3 biggest
I was
takeaways.
just thinking I didn't share those
Yeah.
things, so let me share those things. One big takeaway was just the value of getting out of the day-to-day in a
Mm,
space that has some intentionality behind it for ideation. So, like,
mhm.
just the value there was so much value in having conversations. I got a few ideas about some things I wanna do business-wise, like, that was so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
The community piece, I feel like I attend these events and I always walk away with like 1 or 2 people that I've added. Like, yes, I've added a lot of people to my network. I know a lot of people, but there's like 1 or 2 people who are now kind of in that inner network piece who I'm gonna be talking
Yeah.
to more regularly. So I think that's super beneficial. And then the third thing is it's a space to just be a little bit more vulnerable and ask
Yeah.
questions and share a little bit more, which I think we all need,
Mm.
is that space to be more vulnerable. So I would say, building that community, space to be more vulnerable. And now I'm forgetting what that first thing was that I said. We'll come back to it, but those are my three takeaways.
I love it. I love it. And the vulnerability piece and like this, I think it connects back to what you were saying earlier, an ability to say things or ask questions that maybe you can't say or ask or seek to understand within your current role. And we agree with like authenticity, we agree with vulnerability, and we also understand like right time, right place, right?
Yes.
And so this presents like broadens that space for you to be a little bit more vulnerable and maybe ask additional questions and have some different conversations. So really beneficial. I can't wait also to connect folks to this event because I think your description and how intentional it is really powerful and it'd be a really cool space for people who are just trying it out to get into. Um,
Yes, and I will just name, like, as you're thinking about events that you attend, this one in particular, like, I don't know for us that it's a huge client base for us based on what we do and the size of these businesses. So,
mhm,
but in going to it for my own sales skills, for my own strategy, and for partnerships, it's huge. So I name that just because as you're thinking about events, there's lots of different reasons to attend different events. And you want to think about like, am I really trying to grow my network? Is
yeah.
there a certain skill set I'm really trying to develop? Am I going to this event not only to learn, but to also really sell what I do? And different events allow for a different amount of like, some are all about like share what you do and sell it. Some are very much like this is not that community, this is not that environment. And I name that just because you really want to think about and explore the event. I think sometimes we can get really excited about an event and just be like, yes, this sounds great. And then when you get into it, you're like, oh, maybe this isn't the right thing for me. And other times we may see an event where it's like, I don't know. And then you explore more and realize, oh, this is exactly what I need. So
Mhm.
just that really looking at what is the event, what is whatever it is, like what's the community, what is the return on this investment for my personal development or what my goals are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the plan and piece, and so we would recommend even start where you are now, but each year as you do development with your team, make sure you have your development plan written out and make sure it includes this area of building connection and community and personal development. And we encourage you not to shortchange yourself on this because you deserve this time and investment and development, as well as it's going to have a huge benefit. First, though, it's going to benefit your growth and learning, but it has this additional benefit of partnerships and opportunities for business and all of those good things as well.
I
So,
want I wanna just name really quickly with this because I've had some conversations recently.
mhm,
We can sometimes, especially when finances are a little tight, we can sometimes really get into this space of like, what's the financial return? And I
mhm,
just encourage people to think more long term. Like, I'm not encouraging anyone to take on unnecessary debt or put themselves at risk. And we often, when we get into that kind of nickel and dime type situation, we can often be in a very scarce mind, like scarcity mindset.
Mhm.
And these things can totally shift. Like attending an event can completely shift your business, completely shift your leadership, how you approach things. And sometimes it's a little bit of a longer runway in terms of like return on
Yeah.
investment, but it's so powerful. So I just want to name that,
Yeah,
that
it's
like think about that as
important
you're, yep,
investment. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Think of it as investing, not just in the financial returns to your point, but leadership. What you're going to get as you come out of it. And so, as a couple of other things to share as you are thinking about building connection, community, and doing your personal development, just some additional tips. And, in addition to what we talked about, is to look for opportunities to collaborate and share with others. So we already talked about masterminds in particular. You could attend conferences. We talked about workshops. So think, how can I help? You can always start with a helping piece of how can I help others based on my knowledge. So earlier as we were talking, I was thinking to myself, we mentioned if you can't find an event. Okay, if you can't find an event, throw the event, right?
yeah, yeah,
We
be
started
the
that this year. Yeah,
event.
be the event. Look for opportunities to connect people. If you can't find it, we're going to list some things, but if none of that resonates, you start the community event in a way that feels in alignment and helpful for you. We've had clients recently launch doing webinars in their zone of genius, not to see very short-term sales, but to help to build people's awareness. We have kicked off community-based events, so look for opportunities to both collaborate and share with others.
And looking on that note, and I've talked about it a little bit. I'm doing this book club that's starting this week when
Yes.
this gets published. And I very much, this was like, this is the community I want. Like, I'm always reading books about leadership and
Mhm.
I always want to have conversations. I'm bringing tidbits to you all the time,
Yeah.
right? But I'm reading those books and you're not necessarily reading the same ones. And so I was like, this is a community I want. So I'm just going to build it and we're
Let's
going to
just
see how it
make it.
goes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. And we have more details that we're going to share about the book club for you to join, because if you're listening to this, there's still time for you to
Yes.
enroll. But that's a huge example, Chloe, about, hey, I'm interested in this. I'm an expert in leadership and development. And so I'm going to launch this book club with an opportunity for people to be in community, learn some from me, but most importantly, like build connection with each other.
Well,
So,
and with that, as we're thinking about events and communities, a lot of our listeners, our founders have their own businesses. So that's a particular type of
yeah.
event. And having been a leader in an organization, in an intern, in a big corporation myself, some of those types of community events aren't the right events for you. And there's also a matter of like, you've got internal development and how much can you share about what's going on because you're not the business owner, et cetera. And so this is where the book club idea, and I name this because you want to look for these types of events.
Yeah.
There are still events that you can attend that will help your leadership, help your development, help your growth, even if you're not a business founder
Mm,
or running your own business, to grow and develop your leadership and build community for yourself. Because one of the things that can be really hard in when you're internal to a big organization is having those more vulnerable conversations
mhm.
that don't then put you at some kind of risk in terms of like, okay, if I go and talk to HR about this development thing that I've got that I want to be working on, could that potentially impact how people view me or what things look like? And so external communities can be really helpful as well in that safety piece, from a like psychological safety, being able to be a lot more vulnerable and transparent. So
Mhm.
just want to name that, but you need to be intentional about the types of events you attend so they are beneficial.
Yeah, totally agree. And this hits on the kind of next piece that we have for you, which is to invest in your team. So, not only for you to attend events and have that development, invest in your team attending some of those events, have the opportunity for learning, for collaboration, for deep knowledge. We hear from leaders a lot that they want their team to be more entrepreneurial in their thinking. They want folks to have more ownership. If you are only trying to do that with the actions that you're asking them to take and the learning and development internal to the company, you're not giving and providing the opportunity for that individual to go to their next level. So we really encourage leaders to have their team identify opportunities for learning and growth external to the company and attend those events, and then come back and share, hey, what's most helpful, what's beneficial for our team. It's one of those mechanisms that you can't really get the same result by just explaining to someone, hey, I want you to think more strategically, or I want you to have like an end-to-end approach. Doing this really up levels, things really quickly. And so we definitely recommend that investment in team as well.
And like, we've worked with a couple clients on their like what does their leadership development,
Mhm.
professional development look
Mhm.
like for their teams. And
Yeah.
so for just some thoughts around this, set a budget, think about that. This should be a line item because it is so impactful to your business as far as budget for development for your team. And then with one client in particular, we worked with them on like, here's this form that you fill out, and not to make it really difficult by any means. Like, we want it to be accessible, but like, here's the event I want to attend. Here's what I'm hoping to learn from it. And here's what I want to bring back to the organization from it. Right. So, like, just something really basic to
Yeah.
get folks in being intentional about those events. It gives you a sense of like, okay, they're taking ownership of this. They're going to bring back this information, share their insights. So there's a lot of benefit to sending your team out externally, getting
Yeah.
that innovation, having them connect, having them hear what other people are doing, how other people are approaching it, especially when it comes to acting like an owner and taking on more strategic
Mm.
thinking. It's a space where they can also we talked about power dynamics in a couple episodes, be outside of those power dynamics to show up differently, ask different questions, flex their expertise in a different way, and build their confidence as well. So coming back into the organization, you're getting so many benefits
Yeah.
besides just the learning that they should be doing, that it is the event or whatever it is.
Absolutely. We have just seen this be so powerful. Completely agree. And so finally is to, okay, well, a note here, I guess an encouragement is to do this, get out, make those connections, but also keep your long-term vision in mind, and make sure that you're very grounded in your business, right? So we also see sometimes folks will go to an event, attend the thing, and they want to come back immediately and start to change everything in their
Yes. Oh my
business to
gosh.
match the
Yes.
other folks in the in the event they attended, or they were at a mastermind and someone gave them a great idea and they come back and they drop it on their team and they're like, we should do this today. Take a beat, right? One of my mentors, Jadah, says, like, give it time to integrate. So keep your long-term vision in mind, understand your strategy. You don't have to take on all the recommendations, advice, ideas that you're given when you go into these spaces. So please be mindful of that, and keep your kind of long-term strategy in mind. Did you have something to add to that,
That
Chloe? I know you
well,
were
it
like, yes to this.
Yes, yes. It was so funny because I was actually thinking about Jada as well, as far as like if there's those big ideas, put them in your, as Jada would say, your dream bank, right? So you
Mhm.
have them
Yeah.
there in that bank. And then when you get to your next quarterly planning or annual planning, depending on when the right time is to bring this piece into the business, you are intentional about it and
Yes.
you're not giving your team like whiplash.
Yeah, oof.
We
Because
see that
we
all the
get
time.
yeah, so we don't want your team coming back mad at us because
Yeah.
you're coming with these 50 ideas, so please keep that long-term vision in mind, be mindful, take your time when initiating change. Of course, there's times to move fast, but just be really intentional about how you're thinking about it.
And as you're being intentional about how you think about it for your team, also going back to like setting that budget, showing them that you want to invest in their development as well is
Mm.
so important and this is like from a long-term culture perspective.
Yeah.
This helps to create a culture of learning, of growth, a growth mindset in your folks. So just keep that in mind as well. And when they come back and have 25,000 exciting ideas about things they want to do, also going, great, let's put this on a list. Let's put this in this dream bank of sorts so that when the time is right, we can, because we don't want to stifle that innovation.
Yeah.
And you can't just
Yeah.
shift on, on any idea that comes in. So just bringing it back to that. The same thing when it comes to your team is encouraging, being excited, and also keeping them grounded in the strategy as well, in the long-term strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is it, folks. We wanted to share a bit about Chloe's experience attending this event. We're going to list out some great folks to follow who we know throw events for you to have access to,
Ourselves
and
included.
including us. Yeah, I
Yes.
keep forgetting. I'm so in synergy vibe and elevate.
Yep,
Didn't
yep.
even think about it. But yes, from us as well, some opportunities to be in partnership with us. And we encourage you, if you haven't already mapped out a learning and development plan for yourself for this year, now is a great time. It's not too late. So map out a few things that you can do. Join us for the Leadership Book Club, and look for opportunities to be in that deep connection and kind of get outside of the business, and have a great time, because typically this is really fun as well.
And one more really quick plug. We share
Yeah.
some of this in our newsletter on a pretty regular basis, like
Mhm.
when we attend things or different things. So if you're not on our newsletter list, please go to CoCreateWork.com. I'll also include the newsletter link in our show notes, but get on our newsletter because we share not just things we're doing, but we share the things we've attended,
Yes.
events that we've heard of, just different pieces. So please make sure to subscribe and you'll get all that information from us as well on a regular basis.
Beautiful. That's what we do, is make connections.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us for the podcast today. As always, thank you for your leadership.